Let me say this clearly from the start. If you're on Social Security or planning to be in the next few years, what's coming in 2026 is not as simple as good news. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. The headlines sound promising. But headlines aren't bank statements. I've been tracking the early numbers, the policy language, the way officials talk around the increase instead of about it. And something doesn't add up. Yes, there's a benefits increase coming. That part is real. But what most seniors aren't being told yet is how that increase could be reshaped, offset, or quietly reduced depending on where you live, how you file, and what other income touches your account. Here's why you need to stay with me. Because the change everyone's celebrating on TV may not be the change that actually lands in your bank account. You've lived long enough to know this pattern. Whenever Washington announces help, there's always a second sentence that doesn't make the headline. A rule, a formula, a timing issue. And that second sentence is usually where seniors either gain security or lose it without realizing until it's too late to adjust. I've spoken with retirees who thought an increase meant relief. They planned around it. Then they discovered later that higher Medicare premiums, tax thresholds, or income rules quietly ate it up. They weren't careless. They just weren't warned. So before you get excited, before you make any financial decisions, before you assume 2026 means breathing room, you need the full picture. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. US, Canada, UK, or somewhere else. Because what I'm about to explain affects seniors differently depending on location and income. And if you want clear, honest breakdowns that don't sugarcoat reality, make sure you subscribe now. This information helps seniors protect themselves. Not politicians protect headlines. In a moment, I'm going to explain what this 2026 increase really is, how it's calculated, and the quiet factors that could change everything for you personally. Stay with me. Missing this could cost you more than you think. Now let me explain why this 2026 increase is already being talked about behind closed doors, and why seniors should not assume it automatically means relief. Because when Social Security adjustments are announced early, it's usually not just about generosity. It's about pressure. The increase you're hearing about is tied to cost of living calculations, inflation, housing costs, medical expenses, energy bills. All the things that hit seniors first and hardest. On paper that sounds fair. Prices go up, benefits follow. But here's what experience has taught me. The formula never tells the whole story. I've sat with seniors who told me their check went up, but somehow they were still falling behind. And when we looked closer, the reason was obvious. Medicare premiums rose. Prescription costs jumped. Property taxes quietly increased. And suddenly that raise didn't feel like a raise at all. It felt like running in place. That's why I want you to listen closely to this part. Not every senior experiences an increase the same way. Some see most of it swallowed by Medicare Part B adjustments. Others lose eligibility for assistance programs because their income crosses a technical line even though their real spending power hasn't improved at all. And here's the part most headlines skip. Timing. Even when an increase is approved, how and when it shows up matters. Delays, phased rollouts, and calculation methods can all change what actually lands in your account. Seniors on fixed incomes don't have the luxury of waiting and seeing. You plan months ahead. You budget carefully. You deserve clarity. I remember my grandmother sitting at the kitchen table carefully writing out her monthly expenses with a pen and notebook. She didn't trust headlines. She trusted math. And she always asked the same question when she heard good news from Washington. How much will I really see? That's the question we're going to answer together. Because once you understand how Social Security increases are calculated and what usually moves at the same time, you start to see why some seniors benefit more than others. And why a promised increase can quietly come with strings attached. The formula itself uses something called the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. That's CPIW. Not the Consumer Price Index for the elderly. That doesn't drive these decisions. So the basket of goods that determines your increase reflects what younger workers buy. Not what you actually spend money on. You're not buying new smartphones and trendy clothes. You're buying medication, healthcare visits, supplemental insurance, and groceries. And those categories often rise faster than the official inflation number used to calculate your adjustment. This mismatch isn't new. But in 2026, it matters more than usual because inflation hasn't been evenly distributed. Some costs seniors face have stabilized. Others haven't. And if the formula doesn't capture your reality, then the increase doesn't either. This is where I need you to lean in. Because this part almost never gets explained clearly. And it's where seniors get caught off guard year after year. When you hear Social Security increase, most people assume it means more money in their pocket. Full stop. But that's not how the system actually works. Here's the uncomfortable truth. An increase on paper doesn't always translate to an increase in real life. And if you've been on Social Security for more than a few years, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me give you a real-world example. A retiree I spoke with last year saw her benefit go up. She was relieved. She thought, finally, a little breathing room. But within months, her Medicare premium adjusted. Her prescription costs nudged higher. And the grocery bill jumped faster than her check ever did. By the end of the year, she told me it felt like she got a raise with one hand and a bill with the other. That's not because she misunderstood the increase. It's because the increase didn't exist in a vacuum. Social Security adjustments are tied to inflation. But inflation doesn't hit everyone the same way. Seniors don't spend like younger workers. You're not buying new cars every year. You're buying medication, utilities, food. And those costs often rise faster than the formula that decides your check. This is why I get frustrated when politicians celebrate increases without explaining the ripple effects. Because what matters isn't just the percentage. It's what happens around it. And in 2026, those surrounding factors are lining up in a way seniors need to understand now. Not after the checks go out. Some costs adjust automatically. Some creep in quietly. And some don't show up until months later when the headlines have already moved on. I've seen too many seniors blame themselves, thinking they miscalculated or spent wrong or didn't plan well enough. Let me say this clearly. If your check goes up and your stress still goes up with it, that's not your fault. That's the system doing what it's always done. Adjusting numbers without adjusting reality. And here's the part that should make you stay with me. In 2026, the increase intersects with changes elsewhere that could either soften the blow or quietly cancel out the relief entirely. That intersection is what we need to walk through next. Medicare Part B premiums are usually announced in the fall. That's after the COLA announcement. So you hear about the increase first. Then weeks later you hear what Medicare is taking. For 2026, both numbers matter. But they're announced separately. And that delay creates false hope for some seniors. The standard Part B premium gets deducted directly from your Social Security check. So if premiums rise faster than your benefit, the net change can be zero. Or even negative. That's not theory. That's happened before. In some years, seniors with lower benefits saw no effective increase at all because Medicare took the entire adjustment. It's legal. It's by design. But it's not explained up front. And there are other deductions too. Part D premiums. Supplemental insurance. Income-related adjustments called IRMAA for higher earners. All of these can shift at the same time your benefit increases. And none of them pause to congratulate you on getting a raise. This is why blanket celebrations feel hollow to seniors who've been through this before. You know better. You've learned to wait and see what actually shows up in your account. Now here's where things start to feel uncomfortable. Because not all increases are created equal. And seniors know this instinctively. Two people can hear the same announcement about a Social Security boost and walk away with completely different realities. Let's talk plainly about how this works. The 2026 increase is tied to cost of living adjustments. And those adjustments are based on inflation data, not on what you personally spend the most on. That distinction matters more than most headlines are letting on. Because the formula doesn't ask how much your prescription costs went up, or how much your rent jumped, or what groceries are doing in your neighborhood. It looks at a basket that doesn't always match senior life. I think about a woman I met in Texas. Retired school secretary. Fixed income. Sharp as a tack. She told me they say I'm getting an increase, but my pharmacy already took it before it arrived. And that's the quiet truth for a lot of people. The increase shows up on paper and disappears in real life. Here's why. Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, property taxes, and out-of-pocket medical costs often rise right alongside or faster than Social Security adjustments. And if you're not paying attention to how those pieces move together, you can end up feeling like you're running in place while prices keep pulling ahead. Another thing seniors need to know, and this doesn't get said enough, is that some people will see more of the increase eaten up than others. If you're newly retired, your situation looks different than someone who's been collecting for 15 years. If you're still working part-time, different rules apply. If you're widowed, divorced, or receiving survivor benefits, the math changes again. This is why broad announcements can be misleading. They make it sound like relief is automatic. But in reality, relief depends on how all the moving parts in your life interact with that adjustment. And this is the moment where I need you to lean in. Because in the next part, I'm going to walk through specific scenarios that determine whether the 2026 increase actually helps you or just gives the illusion of help. Most seniors were never taught to break this system down. But once you see it clearly, you can protect yourself. And that knowledge is exactly what too many people don't want you to slow down long enough to gain. Let me give you 3 real examples. Scenario 1. You're 68. You claimed benefits at full retirement age. You have Medicare Part B and a modest Part D plan. No supplemental income. For you, the increase likely helps. Your deductions are straightforward. Your benefit base is established. You'll feel most of the adjustment. Scenario 2. You're 72. You claimed early at 62. You have Part B, Part D, and a Medigap plan. You also have a small pension that pushes you into IRMAA territory. For you, the increase gets complicated. Higher income-related adjustments kick in. Your Medigap premium may rise independently. The net gain shrinks. Scenario 3. You're 75. Widowed. Living on survivor benefits. You have Part B and Part D. You qualify for extra help with prescriptions, but you're close to the income limit. For you, the increase is a double-edged sword. It might push you over the threshold for assistance. You could lose more in help than you gain in COLA. These aren't hypotheticals. These are real patterns I see every year. And they're why one-size-fits-all headlines don't work. Now let's get very practical. Because this is where seniors start leaning forward. The benefit increase everyone's talking about doesn't land the same way for every household. And if you don't understand how it's calculated, you might expect relief that never shows up or miss money you're actually entitled to. Here's what the Social Security Administration looks at first. Your monthly benefit is adjusted based on inflation measures, but also on timing, enrollment status, and whether other changes quietly offset the increase. That's the part that doesn't make headlines. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine a retired couple living on a fixed income. They hear benefits increasing in 2026 and they breathe a little easier. But what they don't realize is that their Medicare premiums also adjust. And those premiums are often deducted directly from Social Security checks. So if Medicare goes up faster than the benefit increase, the net change can feel smaller than expected. That doesn't mean the increase isn't real. It means the system moves in layers. And here's another layer seniors need to understand. If you claimed benefits early, your increase is calculated on a different base than someone who delayed retirement. Two people can see the same percentage increase and feel completely different results. That's not unfair. It's structural. But you deserve to know it ahead of time. I've spoken to seniors who told me they thought the increase would solve everything. Rent, groceries, prescriptions. And when it didn't, they blamed themselves. Please don't do that. This system is complicated by design. And it rewards people who ask questions. So here's the quiet truth. The 2026 increase helps most seniors. But it helps them best when they understand how to protect it. That means checking how Medicare premiums interact with your check. That means reviewing your benefits letter carefully. And that means not assuming the headline number is the number you'll feel. The actual calculation works like this. Social Security takes the average CPIW reading from the third quarter of the prior year, compares it to the same quarter from the year before, and applies the percentage difference as your adjustment. Sounds simple. But that's where clarity ends and complications begin. Because your individual benefit doesn't just go up by that percentage in isolation. It goes up by that percentage, then gets filtered through deductions, thresholds, and offsets that vary person to person. And those variations are what create the gap between the announced increase and the lived experience. Let's talk numbers for a moment. If the 2026 COLA comes in at around 2.5%, here's what that means in dollar terms. Average retirement benefit right now is roughly $1,900 per month. A 2.5% increase adds about $47.50 per month. That's about $570 per year. Now, if Medicare Part B premiums rise by $10 per month, you're down to $37.50 net increase. If your Part D plan adjusts by another $5, now you're at $32.50. If you have a Medigap plan that rises by $15, you're down to $17.50. Suddenly that $47.50 increase feels a lot smaller. And if you're in IRMAA territory because of income from years ago, you could lose even more. This is the math most people never do until the statement arrives. And by then you're already 3 months into the year wondering where the relief went. Now let me bring this out of the spreadsheets and into your kitchen. Because numbers don't live on paper. They live in your monthly routine. Seniors know this. A benefit increase isn't an abstract. It's groceries. It's gas. It's prescriptions. It's whether you breathe a little easier or keep juggling bills. I spoke with a retired mechanic named Harold not long ago. Fixed income, Social Security and a small pension. He told me every time they say increase, I wait to see if it actually shows up where it hurts. And that sentence stayed with me. Because for too many seniors, past increases didn't feel like increases once inflation, rent, and healthcare took their share. Here's what I'm seeing as we head toward 2026. Yes, there's an increase projected. But the impact depends on three things most headlines never explain. First, when it actually hits your check. Timing matters. A delay of even one quarter can wipe out the psychological relief seniors expect. Second, how much of that increase gets absorbed immediately by Medicare premiums and cost of living pressures. And third, whether you're still subject to outdated income thresholds that quietly claw back part of the gain. This is where seniors feel tricked even when no one technically lied. I remember my grandmother opening her benefit letter, smiling for about 10 seconds, then doing the math out loud. Well, there it goes, she said. The increase was real. So was the disappointment. And that's why I refuse to treat 2026 like a victory lap without asking the harder questions. Because the truth is, an increase that doesn't keep pace with real senior expenses isn't relief. It's maintenance. And maintenance doesn't help people who are already behind. Here's the part you need to hold on to as we move forward. Not all increases affect all seniors the same way. Some will feel it immediately. Some will barely notice. And some, especially those just above assistance thresholds, may feel nothing at all. That uneven impact is the quiet story no one is telling loudly enough. The official COLA announcement usually comes in October. That's when Social Security releases the percentage for the following year. But the money doesn't arrive until January. That's a 3-month gap. During that gap, Medicare premiums get finalized. Tax brackets get adjusted. State-level programs recalculate eligibility. And by the time your first adjusted check arrives, the landscape has already shifted. This is why preparation matters more than celebration. You can't control the formula, but you can control how ready you are when the changes hit. That means reviewing your Medicare coverage now, before open enrollment ends. That means checking whether you're close to any income thresholds that could trigger IRMAA or affect other benefits. That means talking to someone who understands Social Security rules if your situation is complicated. Because waiting until January to figure this out means you're already 3 months behind. I want to take a moment here and speak to you not as numbers on a chart, not as beneficiaries, but as people who built this country with your hands, your time, and your sacrifices. Because when we talk about Social Security increases, it's easy to get lost in percentages and formulas and forget the human side of what these changes actually mean. I've sat with seniors who told me that even a small increase feels like a breath of air. Not because it makes them rich, but because it gives them a little room to breathe. An extra grocery trip without anxiety. A prescription filled on time instead of stretched out. A grandchild's birthday card that doesn't come with guilt attached. These aren't luxuries. They're dignity. And I also need to say this honestly. You've earned the right to be skeptical. Many of you have watched promises come and go. You've seen increases announced with excitement only to be eaten away by rising rents, higher medical costs, and groceries that cost more every month. Seniors know how quickly a raise can disappear in the real world. That's why this moment matters. Not because 2026 magically fixes everything, but because it reveals how fragile retirement security still is for so many people. Social Security was never meant to be your only lifeline. But for millions of seniors, it has become exactly that. And when that lifeline barely stretches far enough, every adjustment carries emotional weight. I think about the elders in my own life who taught me resilience. They didn't ask for special treatment. They asked for fairness, for honesty, for systems that didn't forget them once their working years were over. And every time I dig into these policies, I hear their voices reminding me, numbers are important, but people are everything. So if you're watching this and feeling a mix of relief and worry at the same time, that makes sense. Hope doesn't erase caution. And caution doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means you're paying attention. And paying attention is exactly what protects you. I want to leave you with this truth. Because after everything we've walked through, it's the part that matters most. A Social Security increase doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. On paper it looks like progress. In real life, it only matters if it actually keeps up with how you're living, how you're paying bills, how prices are hitting you right now. You've earned these benefits. Every paycheck, every tax, every year you showed up and did your part. So when the system announces an increase, it shouldn't come with confusion, fine print, or quiet trade-offs that cancel it out. Seniors deserve clarity, not spin. What I'm seeing going into 2026 is this. The increase is real, but so are the pressures trying to swallow it. Healthcare costs, housing, food, utilities. Those don't wait for government adjustments. They show up every month.